Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Stannard, and I've been the host of Q&A Live for roughly 8 years now. And you are having the privilege of watching my final show here at GNA TV. And before I begin, I richly want to thank those who helped make the show possible. I want to thank Christo's Pizza, who've been very generous in donating a little grub here over the years, twice a month. Thank you very much, Chris and Athena. And of course, I want to thank GNA TV for allowing the show to even happen. And over the years, I have had some of the greatest producers and directors and help on this show. Kids from Manchester Elementary School and Burton who have taken time out of their lives to come and work on this show. And without their help, the show couldn't have possibly have happened. They've been wonderful, and my thanks go out to them. And of course, I have to thank you folks for tuning in. If it wasn't for people watching this, there'd be no point in doing it. The other thing I'd like to point out before I start the show is that if there's any corporate sponsors out there that want to help out GNA TV, I would encourage you to call the station, 362-7070, and lend your support to what's going on here, which is a nice segue to lead to my last and final guest of my end of Q&A Live. I have with me today a longtime friend of mine and a friend of my family's, Don Dorr of Dorr Oil and Dorr Everything. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We talked about doing this show, and I think this might be the first time you've been interviewed to be on TV.
Probably the last.
Well, Donnie, I do want to thank you for being my final guest. This is it's a great thrill for me. We've been friends a long time, and started off. You were friends with me before I was here. I think you had a connection with my family for a long time. But
I did, yep.
Before I get there, I think what would be fun for the viewers would be you're a lifelong resident of Manchester, and everybody knows you as Dorr Oil and Dorr Septic and Monarch Auto Body and all the other things that you do. But there was a time there was a young Don Dorr, and that Don Dorr grew up in Manchester in what was probably a different town. And I'd like to know your thoughts about what it was like growing up here, and what did you do for work before you became one of Manchester's most notable entrepreneurs?
What is there besides work?
Not much.
Well, it's certainly different. There's no doubt the town has changed 180 degrees. It's not like it was.
Yeah.
I don't expect it ever will be. Everybody knew everybody. Nobody had any money. Most people didn't work a lot in the winter. Well, they had to work some, but it wasn't the work around that there is now. So, I could, we moved to South Dorset when I was fairly young, but you could hitchhike from South Dorset to Manchester and be back in South Dorset again with another ride in 15 or 20 minutes.
Wow. Yeah.
But I think you'd walk a hell of a long ways now before you got a ride. Nobody.
Where in South Dorset did you live, Don?
Right across from Ernie Joel's gas station, a little down in the Dugway. It used to be the office for the marble mill. They had a marble mill where...
Is that where an old Dido is?
That's where an old Dido is now, yeah.
There was a marble mill there. I know
there's
some marble slag left over.
There was a finishing mill there.
Really?
Yep.
Never knew that.
Yep. Greeley Roberts and Nate Roberts both worked there.
Uh-huh.
You had big tables out there that they sawed the marble and then polished it with sand.
And the marble came from?
Dorset.
Came from the Dorset quarry. Oh, imagine that. Was that quarry a working quarry when you were growing up?
No.
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 You're not that old.
They did work Tom Malone's quarry later on.
Yeah.
We used to swim in it when we was kids, but after that, I think back in maybe in the middle 60s or something, they opened it up again and run it for 7 or 8, 10 years.
I remember because that's when they built the new Dorset School, and I remember looking out the window at the crane taking the marble out, and I remember getting hit side to head from an eraser from Mr. Charlie Boyce, my science teacher, for looking out the window.
Yeah, there was 2 quarries up there. There was a little one, and then there was one that was about 90 feet deep.
Oh.
I don't know what's there now, but
I think it's a private home up there today.
yeah, could be.
Just why that's part of the change that we're talking about. But so you grew up right there in South Dorset, and at some point you moved to Manchester?
Well, no, I was born in Manchester on Barnumville Road.
Yeah.
My grandfather owned a place up there. I think they call it up the Knolls now or something, but it was just off from Barnumville Road.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
And we lived down in Manchester until, God, I don't know, I went to school first 2 years, I think, in center school, and then went to South Dorset.
Yeah.
And when they closed the South Dorset school, we went to Dorset.
So when you, in your time in South Dorset, did you know all these characters that are members of my family? Do you know my parents back then? My dad?
Well, your grandfather had the job of getting the fires going in the morning at school, and your father and your uncle were designated to go do the work.
Wait a minute. When you said my grandfather started the fires at the school?
Yeah, they had wood fires.
Yeah.
And
at the school there in South Dorset?
Yeah, it was your father and your uncle that used to come and get them going. I suppose your grandfather had the
matches.
job. He had the job.
Yeah. I'll be darned.
Yeah. And then they had a big round wood stove in the room there. Yeah.
And for those folks that are watching this, they may not know the South Dorset School, which is now, I think, Lee Romano's publishing company.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
That was the school where everybody went to school.
Yep.
I'll be darned.
Yeah, they had 2 rooms downstairs.
Now, they're a little older. My dad's a little older than you.
Yep.
A little bit.
Yep.
So they made sure the school was warm when you kids showed up.
Well, not always, but around that time. Yeah, I think it usually wasn't bad, you know. If it wasn't quite warm enough, you kind of got around the stove a little bit.
Got a little closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So you'd walk to school from South Dorset?
Well, it wasn't too hard to do.
Yeah, that's not too far. Yeah.
School buses weren't heard of then.
There was no transportation for the kids, just showed up.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they didn't have a school bus. Dorset got a school bus, a little Chevrolet. I think Paul White was the bus driver. Probably about 1947 or 8, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Was the first school bus.
Wow.
I rode on it some, and then I rode on it part way and walked the rest of the way when I wasn't good.
Yes, that was there was a time where if you were misbehaving on a bus, you got the opportunity to walk home.
Well, they just opened the door and you
Out you go.
drive away and leave you.
Yeah.
That's the way it was.
Kind of hard to do that today.
Shouldn't be, but it is.
Yeah. Well, a different time. So did you move back to Manchester?
Yeah. My father died in about 1953. And, I moved to Manchester about 55.
55. Yeah.
15, let's see, yeah. No, before that. I guess right after Dad died, I got a job, worked at Peterson's furniture factory for a while over on Dufresne Pond Road.
I bet there's only a handful of people who would know where that
There's
is.
about 8 or 9 people that worked there.
There were.
Yep.
Yeah. What kind of furniture do they make?
Pine furniture. They made all of the original furniture for Bromley out of that mill.
Wow.
It was kind of plain and rugged furniture,
Yeah.
all native lumber. They used to buy the lumber from Earl Batchelor and different
Yeah.
lumber mills. They'd bring it and They didn't have cranes or nothing then. There was a roll on the back of the truck. And if they didn't have that roll, they put a roll under the lumber before they loaded it. And then they'd back up like hell and stop, and the lumber would roll off. The truck would come up pretty high. And if the driver was too young, he learned quite quickly how to do it. And it would come down pretty hard.
Come down pretty hard.
Yeah. And then they
Sounds slightly dangerous.
Nah, not really.
Not if you were paying attention. How old were you when you were working there?
Oh, not quite old enough. I guess about 15 or 16,
Yeah.
something like that. 16, I think. Yeah, I worked at the Pollitt Road job with my father before I was 16. Had to
I'm sorry, the Pollitt Road job?
when they put in the road from Pollitt to West Pollitt towards Granville. There was a guy that had a right from Pollitt Village right over to the other side of Butternut Bend.
There hadn't been a road there prior to that?
Yeah, but it hadn't been. I don't think it was blacktop.
Wasn't blacktop.
I don't think so.
My goodness. So what'd your father do? You said you worked for your father doing that road.
Well, he was a mason at that time. Did mason work most. Yep.
Stonemason fireplace and
Yep.
foundations and that kind
Yep.
of thing?
Yeah, he built those abutments over there, and then there's a marble wall around the house that Phil Squares' daughter owns or did own.
Where's that?
Just beyond, I think they call it Spanktown, but just beyond the Waite Road, beyond Bus Mars's auction barn.
Okay, sure.
There's quite a high marble retaining wall like in front of that house.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
that was
built
his
that.
handiwork. So you worked for him before you went to work at Peterson's?
Well, we worked for that guy that
Yeah.
had the job. Yeah. But I didn't care too much for that, so I got a job at PT Motors, helping them build their garage.
And PT Motors?
Yep.
Where was that?
Well, it's where Stewart's is now. Stewart's
Oh, ended up being Leo's Motors
quite a lot later, yeah.
quite a lot later. Wow. Let's see.
Yeah, I think,
So it was always Leo's to me. I didn't realize there was another garage
no,
there.
Bob Tregellian built it back about 1950, 53, I think. Maybe, might have been 54, but I think 50. Maybe the summer.
And it was just a garage service station gas pump?
They sold Nashes, Nash
sure.
cars.
Yeah. Right.
Do you remember when Howard Brophy had a Nash Healy?
Barely.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about it. I actually did an interview. One of the very first interviews I ever did was with a tape recorder sitting at Howard Brophy's kitchen table over when he moved back to East Dorset, back to the house where he was originally from.
Do you ever remember when Terry Tyler had hair?
I don't think anybody remembers when Terry Tyler
I got
had hair.
pictures of him.
You
I
got
worked
pictures
with
of Terry
him.
Tyler with hair?
Yeah.
Oh, gee, those are collector's items.
Up at PT Motors there with
Terry worked there.
Terry worked there, me, Frank Bashy, Gene Vermette,
Sure.
all those guys. Even Bob Kinney worked there one time. Remember Bob?
No.
You know where Hazelton Construction is, just this side of Rumney's.
Sure.
That was Bob Kinney. That was his grandfather.
Okay.
He ran the garage there, but then he went to work for PT Motors.
What was your job there at PT Motors?
Well, I helped them build the place to start with. Got an unheard of price of $1.25 an hour. But that only lasted about a month, and they run out of money. So he was going to let me go, and I said, well, God, I kind of wanted to learn something. So I said, what can you pay me? And he says, well, $25 an hour a week. I said,
$25 a week.
a week. So I said, that's good, I'll take it. So I worked there for better than a year for that. Then they
Did you work as a mechanic, you mean? Or
Yeah, I was working with Paul Anderson, learning body and fender work. Worked there, 3-4 years, quite a while.
Yeah. And by this time you were a teenager, 18, 17?
Yeah, about 17.
17, 18 years old?
Yeah. Got fired 4 or 5 times, lost about a half a day's work.
Why would they fire you, Don?
Oh, I was young and hot-headed, and Bob was hard to work for.
Probably the same reason they put you off the bus.
But anyhow, I learned quite a bit from Paul. Well, from Bob, too.
Yeah?
Yep, they were nice people.
That was the back, so you're a middle teenager, late teenager.
Yep.
Did you go straight into the working for yourself from there? Did you ever go in the service at all? Or?
No, I didn't go in the service. I worked for Bob, and then I kind of.
Well, yeah, because by this time.
I worked at the Ford garage one time too for a little while.
Oh, that's where the town park is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who owned it then?
Henry Dooley.
Henry Dooley owned it. Yeah.
Yep.
I barely remember Henry.
Well,
Was his father? He was the father of Jimmy Dooley, who was
yes,
lost
he
in the war?
was. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Boy, that's.
Well, Henry Ford came there and designated that building in 1929 when they built it.
Henry Ford?
Yep.
The Henry Ford.
That's what they tell me.
No kidding.
Yep. And they sold cars there right up until the town bought it.
Yeah.
Ford's.
Yeah.
Took the oil out and dumped it over the bank and let her go. All of a sudden, they never found no pollution. Imagine that.
Yeah, that's what they did. Yeah.
But I'm sure it's there. Anyhow, that's it.
Well, that's not quite it. You, nice try. So did you transition from working at the Ford garage to working for yourself in the auto business?
Well, I got done for Bob and in the Ford. I don't remember which one was first. I didn't work at the Ford garage too long, 6 months or something.
Yeah.
But I kind of had a hankering to work for myself.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was there wasn't much to do here in the wintertime. And I think that people that are living here today that have either just moved here or my kids that are in their 30s now, they don't ever remember a time when there wasn't 12 months worth of work here. But I do. I remember when my grandfather had the plumbing company, he'd have plumbers out there shoveling sidewalks.
Yep.
It was skinny. It was skinny in the wintertime. Were you able to find enough to do in the winter?
Yeah, I don't think my father had any problem finding work for me.
Funny how dads are about finding work for their kids, isn't it? Yeah, you were always busy.
Yeah.
Well, so did you transition from working at the Ford garage or PT or PT Motors, one of them, to going into business for yourself?
Yep. I started a little body shop down there. I rented a barn from Camber, where the little gas station is now down the depot.
Oh yeah.
Where Buckley was.
Sure. It's now,
Well, in
it's
back
now
of
the
that-
Garden Arts. It's now the Garden Arts store.
Yeah. Well, in back of that there was a big old barn,
Yeah.
and I rented that from Camber for $75 a month.
Jesus.
And I started doing body work.
Just went out on your own.
Yep.
Now, what was? I'd like to bring you back to that. I mean, was that it was kind of a big leap to going from working for somebody else to working for yourself? Was there any apprehension, or were you nervous about it? Were you
Well, I don't
anxious?
know. I'd had a little garbage route before that, and I'd sold vegetables and
Wait a minute. You had a garbage route?
well, a little one, yeah. I sold grit papers. You know.
Better tell people what that is. The grit. I remember.
Well, it was a little newspaper that had a lot of. I don't know. I think it came out of Pennsylvania or somewhere, but they had paper boys
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I think the first ones were 3 cents, and I got maybe a cent or something like that. And then it went up to 5 cents, and I got 2 cents, I think. So I had about 50, I think, or so. Somewhere around 50 people between Dorset and Manchester and East Dorset.
And did you transition the paper route? And while I'm here delivering the paper, I might as well walk away with your garbage?
No, I delivered them on a bicycle.
Oh. You aren't bringing the garbage back on a bicycle. No.
Yeah. And
What'd you do? Just buy a pickup truck and go pick up garbage?
yeah, I guess. I think I bought a 35 Ford pickup off of Morley Reed for $25.
And there you are in business.
Well, everything just happens.
It does, doesn't it?
Yep.
So you're behind Kemper's place, renting a barn, and you went in the auto body business.
Yep. I learned how to do some body work with Paul Anderson, and
Yeah.
he taught me how to weld. And just went on from there. So let's see, I think I had the body shop about a year, maybe a year and a half or something like that before my brother come to work with me.
Which brother?
Dexter.
Oh, sure. I knew Dexter. He was a stock car driver, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, later on. Yeah, but
That's when I knew him. He used to have a stock car, and where Toomey's bag is now used to be a garage there.
yeah,
Doug Kilburn used to own it back
Yep.
some while ago.
yeah. And well, let's see. I think I had to be of age in order to be Dexter's guardian. I think because Dad had died, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then, as soon as I was old enough, I got him.
So he came to work with you there.
He came, lived
that
with
barn.
me. He lived with me at home, and
Yeah.
me and my wife Pat.
And where were you living? Where we are now?
No, our first house was right next door to the Avalanche Motor Lodge.
Oh,
And I think,
up on the hill there.
sits a little bit below the road, just before Bob's Diner.
Right, the house right next to Bob's Diner.
Yep. Yeah, that was $5,500 and kind of hard to pay for. Yeah,
It's just amazing, isn't it? $5,500 for that house.
yeah. Payment.
I bet you could get $6,500 for it today, probably.
I don't know. The payment was $44 a month. That's the way it is.
Yeah, but-
times change.
Yeah, but times change. But $44 a month could be pretty hard to come by.
Well, there was times when we had trouble making
I
it,
bet. Yeah.
but we did.
So, at some point in time, you got out of a rented barn and ended up where you are now. That property come up for sale, or you
No, I bought Harry Starks' swamp, where McDonald's is,
Yeah.
and the building next door to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be Harry Starks' duck pond or swamp, duck pond.
Yeah.
We had a little pond there, and he used to run water into where his machine shop was, and he had a little generator there, and he generated a little bit of water power. But after he passed away, John Rodovich was his son-in-law, and they ended up owning it, and I bought that parcel from them. And about that time, well, it was pretty low. It was probably 8 or 10 feet below the road. And,
Oh, really?
yeah. And
So 11 and 30 came down and it dropped down into a pond there.
yeah, right where McDonald's is,
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
of that was below the road. And Dailies were doing a road job down by RK Miles. So I made a deal and bought the dirt that they were taking out to put in to fill the pond with.
And brought it up to grade.
Yep. That was think
But it was just raw land that you bought.
yeah. I think it was like $2,700 for the fill that come out of the road. Had to finance that.
That's not chump change back then.
Oh,
No, a lot of money.
Mr. Daly took me down to the bank and got me a loan. Yeah, that's the way that went.
Now, what would possess you to buy a pond on the side of the road? I mean, you obviously had something in mind there.
I thought it'd be a great place to have a body shop. So I did.
Oh.
And then I bought the old mushroom plant down in Richville, and I sawed that into sections
Wait a minute, back up. Where was the mushroom plant in Richville?
down where Frank Hord owns.
Okay.
That was aluminum sided building. And I bought that and cut it up into sections and brought it up there and built a garage.
You cut the building up, and then how'd you move the building up back then? How'd you move it?
So I just took the panels and put them on a truck. And brought 'em
Oh,
up.
so you just dismantled the building and put it in a flatbed and drove it up
Yep,
and built it back up?
yep. Put it back together piece by piece. Well, long section, probably 20 or 30 foot pieces. And then just stood them back up.
What year was this, Don? Roughly?
Oh, probably 56 or 57. About that.
Amazing. So that's where your body shop started then?
Well, in the barn, and then I moved.
Well, from the Kemper barn, but then you moved over to this building that you built.
Yeah, I think I moved into that building about 1960, 59 or 60.
Yeah.
Yep. You remember Nolette?
I certainly do.
She had a mind of her own, you know.
Nola?
Yes. Well, anyway,
Yeah, she did.
she wanted to know what was going on there, and I said, "Gee, I don't know." So I hadn't done any filling yet. So being kind of a smart ass, I said, "I'll go get me some grade stakes." So I went down to the sawmill and I got some stakes, and I planted them all around in the swamp there. And she come up and she was pretty worried what was happening. I said, "Oh, I'm going to build a building right there." But I forgot to tell her that I was going to fill it in first. She told everybody and tell them.
Oh, yeah, of course. She had quite a network.
Yeah.
She had quite a network. So your body shop moved from over by Highland Avenue to this new building that you've just built on this area that you just filled in,
Yep.
and you ran it there. Now, in my time, I remember that being the VIP diner.
Oh, it was before that.
Oh, it had to be.
Yep.
Was the VIP diner that I remember, was it the same building as the shop?
Well, that was the second building that I built.
Yeah.
The first one was south of that, where the VIP gas station was.
Oh boy, yeah.
That's where the body shop was.
Yeah.
And then
So you're pumping gas now too?
I wasn't, no.
Oh, you weren't?
No. Had the body shop, and then, let's see, I think I took on Studebaker cars about 60. I sold Toyota cars, four-wheel drive Toyotas.
Like you had a franchise?
Yeah. I think I was the second Toyota dealer in the state. I think
Good heavens.
Stewart's up in Cuttingsville were the first ones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they had a good four-wheel drive, like a Jeep.
Yeah.
And then I sold Scout vehicles.
International Scouts.
Yep. And I sold Studebaker
So you
cars.
had a new car dealership there.
Yep. And I sold Studebakers
Yeah.
until Studebaker went out of business. I think that was 64
Yeah.
when they went out. So Took a few years to pay that note off.
I bet.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot of money today, but certainly at the time it was not an inconsequential amount of money.
No, I think I had 6 or 8 new Studebakers in the yard when they announced that they were out of business.
Ooh.
Well, wouldn't be much today, but it was quite a lot then.
Oh, yeah.
Try to sell 6 cars that they don't make anymore is a little hard.
What'd you do with the cars? Did you sell them?
No, I finally got them all sold. I
You
didn't
did?
make nothing, but
Yeah, all right, but you got rid of them.
Owen Burke bought one from me. Pompey Eddy bought one, or Charlie Eddy bought one. David Shea's father bought one.
Jeez.
Warren Beatty bought a new pickup. Walt Kerwin bought a new pickup. I sold quite a few.
Boy.
You
So
know,
how
back-
come you got out of the new car business?
Well, Studebaker went out of business.
Well, when they went out of business, but you still had Scout and you had
Well,
Toyota?
Scout, the dealer in Rutland didn't like me being down here, so they made it kind of hard.
Yeah.
And then Toyota, once they got their feet on the ground here, they wanted to sell cars instead of four-wheel drives.
I see.
I was selling like 25 new four-wheel drives a year.
Ooh.
And then all of a sudden they said, well, we're going to give you 1 four-wheel drive for every 4 cars that you sell. And I said, well, I don't have that kind of a clientele. The other way around, I could live
You
with
could do
it.
that, yeah.
So I, not so politely, told them what to do.
Which was something along the lines of take your dealership back.
It wasn't a problem. Yeah, I called Japan one morning about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we dissolved partnership.
That was that.
That was it.
So when did you buy the spot where you are now?
Which one? Where the oil plant is?
Yeah, where Monarch Auto Body is.
Oh.
Because that's where I've always known you to be, is over there.
About 1965, I think.
65.
Something like
Right
that.
around the time then you were doing, right around the time you had this auto body set up
Yep,
on Route 11 and 30.
yep. Yep.
Pardon my phone going off over there. I forgot to turn my phone
I
on.
think that's when it was.
So you kept that site, though. You kept the site on Route 11 and 30, but then you bought around out back.
No, I sold that site to Bob Spain there, VIP.
Bob Spain. That's a name I actually remember.
Yeah, I
getting
can
into-
remember him quite well.
Yeah.
I never got paid.
Never got paid from Bob Spain. A lot of people didn't, I guess.
Yep.
You'll have some of those here.
Didn't do us any favors.
No.
No. Lost quite a lot there.
So you got set up out on Riverside Heights. Was that house already there? You bought the house?
Yeah, that was Cecil Edgerton's house,
Yeah.
and Anna Edgerton. Myrtle Knapp's mother.
Myrtle Knapp. Maybe.
Remember young Charlie Knapp?
Charlie Knapp. Yeah.
Remember Nugget?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, their grandmother.
Their grandmother. So you bought that property from them.
Yep.
Was the garage already there, or did you build that?
No, I had to build
You
it.
had to build a garage?
Yep. Well, that was quite an undertaking. That was
Oh.
$12,500 for that place.
Doesn't sound like a lot of money to us today,
Well,
but $12,500 was.
Well, I thought it was quite a lot.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Mrs. Edgerton wanted to sell it, and I
Yeah.
went and see her, and I said, gee, I'd like to buy it, but I don't know how that I can do. So she agreed that she'd sell it to me for $12,500. So I said, well, can I give you a deposit on it? He said, well, yes. So I give her $250 down. Then I went to see my friend Homer Ellis. You remember Homer?
I remember Homer Ellis, sure. Yeah, of course.
Well, I told him I wanted to buy a house. And he said, well, that'd be nice. So I wanted to know about getting it financed. And he said, well, yeah, we see what we could do to help you. So he says, well, how much is the house? And I told him $12,500. And he says, well, how much are you putting in? So I showed him my receipt for the 250, and he says, that's it? I said, yeah, that's it. That's all I got. He says, you expect me to take that to the board? Well, I said, if you want to finance a house for me, I guess you got to. So he wasn't sure it was going to fly, but it finally did.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Back when they could do banking.
Oh,
I guess.
God, I was pretty discouraged. I didn't know what to do. I didn't think I was going to get it.
Yeah.
So finally, after the board had their meeting, I just couldn't wait till I heard from him. So I called Mr. Bartlett. Do you remember Mr. Bartlett? Ian Bartlett?
No.
Oh, he used to run the creamery down there on Lincoln Avenue. He was one of the board directors.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, I really hate to bother you at night at home, but I said, I really need to know if the bank is going to finance that house for me or not. And he said, well, we had our meeting today, and we're going to take a chance on you. So I felt pretty good.
Boy, able to sleep that night.
Yeah, better.
Probably haven't slept any night since then. At least there was one night at one time you could sleep.
Yeah.
So then you moved the whole kit and caboodle over to there, all the auto body welding and all that?
Yeah, yeah.
And been there ever since?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yep. Still there. That was before zoning or any of that, you know.
Right.
I think we moved over there about 1970 or 71, something like that.
Then a number of years later, during my time, I certainly remember when Bernie Wilcox had the oil company and gas company there on Route 30, which you ended up picking that up.
Yep. Well, he was getting along towards retirement age, I believe, and he wanted to sell.
Yeah.
Took a while for us to make the deal, but we did.
You didn't know anything at all about the oil business, I'm guessing?
No, nothing.
Nothing. Just jumped in.
Well, it sounded like something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So,
Same with the septic business?
yeah.
Didn't know anything about that, probably.
No, but I knew I had to have one pump, so I had to make a tank to work it with.
You make your first pumper, your first truck?
Yeah.
Made it up?
Yeah, I had a tank that needed pumping. And you remember Howard and Horton's hardware right there?
Yeah, Horton's
on the
Hardware.
corner?
My grandfather worked at that store.
Yeah. Well, they used to do pumpings. They had a pump they used to put in the pickup.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was like a mudsucker pump. And I went to them and told them I needed a tank pumped, and they said, well, we haven't got our pump out yet. I said, well, I could help you if it would do any good. No, we'd probably be 2 or 3 weeks getting it ready.
2 or 3 weeks?
Yep.
You got a full tank now?
Yes.
That's kind of a long span.
So I said, well, gee, if I had a tank, I'd try to build one. So Clyde Madison was working there then, him and Walt Hayes and Leo Madison. Do you remember any of those guys?
I sure do.
So Leo and Clyde said, well, gosh, we just took out a big hot water heater up at the Art Center. A humongous big one. Said, I'm sure you could get that tank if you wanted it. So I went up and see them. They said, well, sure, I'm going to get rid of it. So I bought, or didn't have to buy the tank. They give it to me.
Yeah, they're just happy to get rid of it, probably.
Well, it was, at that time, it seemed like it was humongous big, but it was only 300 gallon, you know.
Yeah.
So it was all covered with asbestos and chicken wire and everything, you know. So we just tore that off.
Tore that all off.
I went and got a vacuum pump out of a barn for a milking machine pump.
Okay.
I rigged that up on top of it. I went to Bromley and found a valve, put a valve on it, and some hose, and put it on an old Studebaker truck, and away I went.
Pumped your own tank first?
Yeah.
Got that one taken care of?
Yeah. And then, God, as soon as your father and uncle heard that I had a tank, they started using me.
Now, we should probably tell people that my father and my uncle were in the plumbing business.
Yeah, there were.
Working for their father.
Yep.
My grandfather started Stannard Plumbing.
And I think,
So they heard you had a truck and that you were pumping tanks out.
yeah.
They
Well,
probably float you a little work.
Well, they wanted to know if I'd pump one out for them, and I said, well, sure. I think we got like $35 for pumping a tank then. It's like $300 now.
I know.
But God, it just kind of grew. Worked out pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. Well, I'll take a minute just to share. Day before New Year's Eve of this year, or the end of 2012, I thought my granddaughter had flushed a face cloth or something down our toilet because my toilet backed up, and it turns out at the same time I thought she'd flushed something down the toilet, my tank was full. I thought my tank had been pumped more recently than it had, and I ended up calling your number at 9:30 at night expecting to get the machine, and I got you, and you said you'd be right up next day, and to my surprise, you showed up. I wasn't expecting to see you there. You know, I thought you have one or two people working for you these days. I thought you might send somebody up.
Well, there wasn't anybody else right handy by. And
that's what you said.
me and one of the other guys
So
done it for you.
I got the guy that started the whole thing to come pump my tank. I felt pretty privileged, I'll tell you. Get the high class help on my deal there.
You got the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. How many people you have working for you now?
Oh, I don't know exactly. Probably 35, maybe 40.
35,
like
40 people you're employing. That's a lot of people.
that. Every week it is.
Every week, yeah, you got to make that not every week. Now, for people that don't have the background that you have and I have, well, first thing I should tell people out there is that, you know, one thing we do have in common, we're both born on June 16th, right along with half of Manchester, apparently.
Yep.
Our little organizer friend, Comet Hand, who drags you and Doug Shaw and
Yep.
Buzz Eichel and everybody else who's born on June 16th out for a coffee on that day. So we have a birthday coming up, which
Yep,
is just
that's
a couple
right.
weeks away. And so, you know, it's amazing how time goes by. But there was a time, I mean, because I remember back when I was in high school, my brother and I were driving around my grandmother's car up on Morris Hill Road, and I don't know, I might have been looking at a deer or something perhaps, and went down over a little bank and got myself stuck. And that was when I first met you in a professional way, when you come and twitched me out of that
Could be.
wet grass. And I think you'd just come over from your mother's birthday party, I think is what you'd said. That was
Could be. I don't remember.
put an unfortunate spin on the evening for me. I think the $5 fee to get pulled out of there was reasonable. I think is how I remember it at the time, being reasonable. But all those years go by, and then at some point in time, you decided it was a good idea to own a tractor.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got some.
You've got a couple tractors there on Route 30, right across the street from the oil business.
Yep.
What possessed you to have an interest in tractors?
Oh, I always had an interest in tractors. Dad had horses when we were kids.
Yeah.
And I said, God, if I ever get money enough, we're going to get a tractor and shovel these horses along.
Yeah.
But
Horses throw a shoe and they get distemper and they leave a little note behind. Yeah.
I don't know. I never disliked horses. I like them, but
Yeah.
I always kind of liked machinery pretty well. So I started collecting tractors quite a while ago. I got quite a few of them.
How long you been doing that?
Oh, I don't know. 40 years probably.
40 years?
I got some that are quite rare, and I got some that aren't worth much at all.
You still on the hunt for tractors?
Only not so much. Maybe if I found something real rare. But I'm getting along in years, you know. I don't need to collect too much longer.
June 16th coming
There you go.
just around the corner.
Yep.
Yeah, well, you know, your friend and the person who I've just learned on this show that you worked with at PT Motors, Terry Tyler, he took it in his head to collect the Vermont musket, and
Did well with
he
them.
did all right with that.
Did very well.
He got a nice collection that he he sold to the Shelburne Museum, which is
That's good.
very nice,
Yep.
very nice collection. You thinking of taking your tractor collection, maybe ship that up there at some point?
I don't think they want that kind of iron.
Is there anybody else in the state or in New England or the country that has a tractor collection like what you have?
Well, out west there's big collectors.
Oh, are there really?
There's quite a few people that got 100 or, 50 to 100 or 200 tractors.
How many do you have out in that field?
Well, altogether I got about 100.
Do you really?
Yeah, I got quite a few in barns that don't show. All the good ones I keep inside.
Oh, do you really? They
Yeah.
got them hidden from the public?
Yeah,
Yeah.
kids knock the glass out of
Oh,
them.
yeah, they like to sit on them and
Yeah,
mess around with them.
not so good,
Yeah, it can be. Can be. Wow. So, I want to ask you how old you are. I know you're slightly older than me. And you had mentioned earlier here that you, once you were in the pumping business and you developed more of a professional relationship than a friendly relationship with my father.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was Jim Stannard, my Uncle John, so you
Yep.
got to know those guys. I think just if nothing else for posterity's sake, since this is my last show, it'd be kind of fun if you might have a experience that you might have had with my dad.
Well, some of them I
One
can
that
tell
you
you
can actually
about,
talk
some of
about
them I can't.
that you can talk about on a family show.
Yeah, your dad was quite an inventor, One time, I think it was probably in the early 70s. I don't remember exactly. Maybe might have been the middle 60s or 70s. Everybody was building wood stoves or going to wood,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was tinkering with waste oil. I built 2 or 3. I run my garage on waste oil. I built a burner to take waste oil, and I built one for my house. Well, anyway, your father wanted to build a wood stove for his house. I said, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, tell me what you want. Well, he said, I don't know exactly what I want, but I want to put radiation in it and have baseboard heat, hot water heat. So I built him a nice wood stove that would take I think it'd take about 3 foot wood. And he designed it. I didn't. He designed it and I just built it. But he designed it with a downdraft and the flue was down low. And it took the air from up top. It was quite unique, and he put baseboard radiation all around the inside of it.
So the water would heat up inside the stove?
Yeah, I think it was 2-inch pipe like they used to use maybe in greenhouses or something, and had radiation on it.
Big stuff.
And he put that around the inside of it, put it in his house there, and I guess it worked pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, years later,
They started manufacturing them, didn't they? Somebody did.
yeah, they did.
Not my dad.
They did, no, they did. But probably, God, I'm trying to think. I think it was after your mother sold the house. Somehow I ended up getting the stove back, and I still have it. Maybe it's something you'd like. I've got the stove down there.
You still have it?
I do, yeah.
I'll be darned, yeah, because it seemed like there come a time I remember it going. I don't have any idea. I never realized it went back to the original manufacturer.
Yeah, well,
You got that stove back.
I don't remember. I don't know if the radiation is still inside of it or not, but I've got the stove
Don't know
there.
why it
but-
wouldn't be. Unless
Probably
somebody
is.
took it out. I'll be darned.
But he made it work.
Huh. Seems like you have a generational thing with my family and stoves. You may remember when I decided it was time to build a house in '78 or so, I bought an old cook stove from Leonard Wilkinson. Remember Leonard down there in Arlington?
Mm-hmm.
And oh boy, I was all gung ho. I bought that stove for $100 and thought I just won the lottery, you know. And I got it home and I realized that it was in a house fire and they'd set it down on the ground and all that cast iron had cracked. Remember this? I brought that stove down to you and was asked if you could weld the bottom. You had it for about a year, and I finally said, man, that stove I'm never getting it back. And I don't know, you probably don't remember this, but I walked in the shop and you said, oh yeah, your stove's right over there. And I went over and there was this box of cast iron parts. Boy, I was starting to throw a fit. And then all your crew was there just laughing. And then they said, oh no, yours is in the other bay. And you had welded it all up and sandblasted it and put it all back together. Charged me. Do you remember what you charged me for that?
No.
Yeah, it was $10. You charged me $10 to do that stove. I still feel like I'll probably owe you breakfast.
There you go.
That stove's still in my house today.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't use it too much, but it's still there as a centerpiece of my house.
Good.
Yeah. So you've been here for every bit of 7 decades.
A little more.
A little more than that. The early part of your life, just like everybody's life, is substantially different than the latter part of your life. You ever given any thought to what this place is going to be like in 70 years from now?
I don't even want to think about it. 25 years from now is going to be bad enough.
Think so?
Oh, yeah. You know, every generation.
It's getting harder for, I mean, I remember when I went and got my construction loan to build my house, and I dealt with what was then First Vermont Bank and Dave Kachukian, and they took a real risk on me because I'm sure just like you, we were all high risk back then. We didn't have any money. All we had was our last name. And you had people that went to bat for you that
Yep.
were able to help set you up in business, and
Right.
ended up where you are today with 35 people working for you and a pretty lucrative enterprise. And you wonder how the kids do it today. Who's going to bat for the kids here today?
I don't know how young kids will get started today. You know, when I started the first body shop, I had to have an oil furnace to paint cars. You know, wood stove didn't work too good.
Yeah.
So I went to Factory Point and I said, you know, I needed to buy a furnace, and Bernie Wilcox said he'd sell me a furnace and put it in an oil tank for $500. And so I went to see Earl Stores and told him I needed $500 for a furnace before fall. And he hemmed and hawed quite a while, and he didn't know what they were going to be able to do. Well, I didn't have any money either, so I don't know if I blame him, but so I finally went and see Bernie, and I said, Bernie, I don't think the bank's going to give me any money, but I still need a furnace. Phil Squares was working for Bernie at that time. So Bernie says, well, we'll sell you a furnace, so you'll have to pay us some time. I said, well, I can't pay you right now, but I'll pay you when I get it. It was $500. That was quite a bit of money.
A lot of money, yeah.
So I went back to Earl Store and I said, I guess I don't need your money. Maybe I wasn't quite that plain, but I said, Bernie Wilcox said he was going to take a chance and sell me a furnace and I could pay him. So then Mr. Store said, oh, well, we can help you. We'll finance the furnace for you. So they did.
They come around.
Yep, but
You probably want to know you could get it somewhere else that way, or somebody else is willing to take a risk.
he was a pretty hard guy to get money out of, you know, gosh. And
But it does seem like today that it's harder for young people that are coming up, to have someone go to bat for them. I mean, it's tough because
Well,
the banks are, we've gone through such crisis with the banks that the banks are so skittish about lending a dime.
I don't think they want to take any risk or any chance.
Yeah, that's
They don't.
right.
I'm not blaming them, but
But on the other hand, how does the Don Dorrs of today, how do they get going? I mean, you had help, but you had people that were willing to
Well,
go to bat.
how does a young person get credit if he doesn't, somebody extend some to him and
get him started,
and get him
yeah.
started and get paid,
Yeah.
I don't mean go out and buy $100,000 house that you can't afford. But,
Right, right.
You got to start.
You got to start
something
small
a
and
little
work your
bit
way up.
and
yeah.
work up.
But it seems like it's getting harder to even start small, though. That's the tough part.
Well, the younger generation seems to think that they can't start off small. They got to start off big and
Yeah,
borrow a lot of money and think they're going to pay it back. Maybe they can't. If they borrowed less and worked harder, they'd do better. If you don't make it in 8 hours, try 16. Nothing wrong with that either,
yeah, yeah.
or 20. 4 hours enough for most young people.
Get some sleep. On that note, that's a great way to end this. Actually, I want to a couple of things. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being my last guest on this show. This is. I told you when I asked if you'd do it that it was going to be a real thrill for me, and it really has been. I'm delighted to have done this, and I'd also like to wish you happy birthday, June 16th.
Yep.
And I'll take that in return. And folks, for those of you who've tuned in, my guests on my final show have been Don Dorr. I didn't stop during the show to reintroduce my guests, which I usually do, Don. I stop and introduce the guests to people out there, because most of the time they don't know who the guest is. And if anybody's watching this show and doesn't know who Don Dorr is, well, too bad. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. I've had a great time doing this show for the last 8 years. I want to thank everybody that's made it happen. And Steve Drunzik's going to be taking over Q&A Live. I may be back doing something special. You never know. But in the meantime, Don Dorr, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate
Yep.
And I usually end this show by saying I'll see you next time, but I'm not sure I will. So thanks all for tuning in, and take care. We'll see you.